Councilmember Sims, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Roll call.
Mayor Velasquez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Clower.
Here.
City Council members Friend. Luna.
Present.
Sims. City Manager Avera.
Here.
City Attorney Sullivan.
Present.
Chief of Police Westrick.
Here.
And City Clerk Graves here.
Thank you. Verification of a posting.
The agenda for the City Council of the City of Hollister meeting of January 17th, 2017 was posted on the bulletin board at City Hall on January 13th, 2017 at 9:24 a.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2.
Thank you. City Attorney, do you want to report out from closed session?
There is no reportable matter. I briefed the I briefed the council on litigation that is ongoing and threatened. Excuse me, as well as the it's litigation with the county and others on the tax sharing agreement, the John Smith landfill, and airport runway restoration grant.
Thank you. We'll move to item 2, presentation of fourth quarter employee service awards.
Thank you very much. I have 2 employees tonight that I want to recognize. One of them isn't here. He couldn't make it. He called me and told me he was sick. So Lieutenant Olson will get his from me later and when he gets better. But I'd like to call up Anna Patterson, please. So Anna and I have actually worked together for a long time, actually. I was assigned animal control about the time you were hired there, and brought in as an animal control officer. And you know, she's so valuable. She's actually been the boss a couple of times when Julie's out. She knows the whole county. She's altruistic, and she's one of those employees that's very valuable. It is my pleasure to give you this 15-year pin. I appreciate you, and want you to be here 15 more years.
And I will be. Thank you. I just want to thank you. I've enjoyed the 15 years that I've been employed for the City of Hollister Animal Control, and I look forward to 15 more.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to Eric Olson. I know he's not here, but thank you, Eric.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I've got a total of 6 personnel I want to recognize, and if I can call them all up right now, I'd like to have them stand next to me. Unfortunately, Norman Fisher isn't in the audience right now. Am I correct? I didn't see him out there. Okay. So if I can have Sean Olguin, Jesse Vallejo, Dave Young, Vince Grewal, and Josh Bezzetta come forward. About 15 years ago, as it says on most of their award, the RDA and the City of Hollister got the opportunity to open up a second fire station. And what Chief Geringer did at the time was hold a examination process to hire 6 firefighters to have 2 engine companies. And we're very fortunate to pick up the folks that you see behind me right now. There's a couple of them that got picked up, one after I had left and went to this other place on the other side of the hill in Santa Cruz County, right? And one of them that had to stand in for me when I got deployed for active duty right after 9/11. So I'm going to name them off, and I'm going to say a little bit about them. Norman Fisher, I met him years ago before we were firefighters. I was a FedEx guy, and he was a high-tech guy. working in Gilroy, and we were both talking about the fire service. Lo and behold, about 5 years later, both of us are in the same uniform, working for the same department, and laughing about the times when we were talking about that work we had in Gilroy. We have Sean Olguin, who's coming from the construction industry and was working as a CAL FIRE firefighter, got picked up with the City of Hollister during that hiring rush, and was able to staff Station 2. Jesse Vallejo was working for Dassel's propane here in the county, and I remember seeing Jesse on the road while I was in a FedEx van, and this is going some years back when both of us were working for private industry. Dave Young worked for the farming community out here in this county, and everybody knows Dave Young who's ever done anything to do with agriculture. Vince Grewal, straight out of high school, right? Went straight to college for his fire academy because he was driven and knew that he wanted to be a firefighter. Me, and in all of my glory, spending time in the military and thinking I was getting an extra paycheck for just showing up 1 week in a month. Well, I got activated during 9/11, left a vacancy, and he filled it. When I came back, I expected to see him sit back on the bench. Chief Geringer decided to keep him. So that tells you something about this guy. And Josh Bezzetta had been a volunteer firefighter with us for quite some time. And 2010, when I left, they picked him up at 2011. And in that short span of time, Josh has worked as a volunteer firefighter, a full-time firefighter, an engineer, and as a captain. And sometimes he has responsibility as a battalion chief. These guys are a huge asset. They're coming from all kinds of disciplines within the community, and what they bring to this department is invaluable with high tech, with construction, with the plumbing industry, with the agricultural industry. These guys got what it takes to do a job like this. And I want to say thank you from me personally. Thank you very much. You give your opinion real quick. You're all welcome to speak if you want. I burned the time out on the clock so they didn't have to, because I know how they are.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have one. Tina just texted me a little bit ago and said that she won't be able to make it. Some parenting duties came up, but I will make sure that she gets this. Real something about Tina. Tina has probably been the last 8 or 9 years trying to do her very best with a department that's been cut and hacked. We're now at the point where we're starting to bring back the greatness of the recreation department. Back in the early 2000s, I think it was one of the better recreation departments in our local cities, and I think that's Tina and I's goal, is to try to reestablish that as one of the best departments, or one of the best recreational departments in the area. So with that said, I will make sure that she gets this, and I will thank her for her 15 years of service as well.
Thank you, Tina.
So we have one more that wasn't on the list, and we wanted to surprise him because we were afraid he might not show up. So on behalf of the department heads and all the staff, person that we all enjoy working for and really appreciate all the guidance he's given, we'd like to give Billy, our city manager Rivera, his 20-year pin.
Oh, 20 years, Ben.
Feels like it was 5 years ago.
All right. All right, we're going to move forward with the consent agenda. Are there any items council like to pull?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull 810 and 812.
810, 812. I'd like to pull item A1. Do we have any items from the public to pull?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
The motion, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We'll go to item A1. I pulled that there's a few corrections on the minutes. Item 52, I had recused myself from that item. And on item 59, the vote in favor was from Friend, Sims, and myself. And that is it. Is there a motion? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Move to item 810.
Good evening. The current park facility master plan was approved by the City Council roughly 15 years ago, and it needs to be updated. In 2005, the City Council approved a new general plan which discourages small neighborhood parks. Recently, there seems to be a shift in rationale from the Planning Commission and the City Council to encourage pocket parks, less than 5 acres, to be built within subdivisions. The city also recently embarked upon a program to improve existing parks by adding, replacing, and updating play structures and other facilities. The Park Facility Master Plan 2017 update will provide for a common vision and organization structure for implementing improved park services, programs, and new facilities through the results of extensive analysis and collaboration with public interest and user groups. Parks are normally constructed by developers as part of their new residential subdivisions. Ongoing maintenance costs of the facilities are funded through the city's Community Facilities District Number 4, which requires new residents to contribute funds with tax assessments. The Park Facility Master Plan 2017 update will also provide a financial plan to examine and ensure that a rational nexus exists between future development, the use and need for future facilities, and the amount of development impact fees assigned to future land uses. In addition, the Park Facility Master Plan 2017 update will provide a recommendation for a 10-year capital improvement program showing peak park growth and anticipated maintenance and replacement projects. Staff interviewed 3 qualified engineering firms to provide the necessary professional services for the project. The Odell Engineering Company was the successful candidate. Odell Engineering has the talent and resources to complete the project with a reasonable time period at a reasonable cost. Roughly will take about 10 months to go through the project with intensive public outreach.
Okay, it's a question.
No, just a comment.
Sure.
My question was, when was the last time it was updated? But you just mentioned 15 years ago?
That's correct.
Okay. And in consideration, when they're doing the update, and will there be something there on the financial plan as to how the city of Hollister can go after some grants to pay for future parks in the city?
I think that would be a very important part of the process. When this plan is actually created, going for grants should be part of the recommendation that the plan will give staff to be able to secure funding for future parks. I think that'd be pretty important.
Because I don't know that is included now in the current one.
The 2005 plan, it may be a small portion of the plan itself, but I think with this update is actually expounding on that and giving staff the resources and the steps to go after proper funding, to be able to secure that for parks.
And that would be my recommendation, to look for future funding, and that would be something that I really would like maybe the update to be focused on.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on that item?
No, sir.
Okay, is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Move to item 812.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Item 812 is seeking permission to go ahead and surplus some equipment out at the yard that's just been sitting there, that it's broken, used up, no longer in use. We've done this before. This is the same company we used in the past. It's Gov Deals Incorporated. It's an online bidding site similar to eBay, and they handle all the paperwork and everything. There's no upfront costs to the city. The costs are the lowest available, in any of these choices. And it not only allows local people to bid on the items, but we actually had people all up and down the state bid last time. It worked very well last time, and it's time to clean up again.
Okay. Are there any questions, Councilmember Luna?
Yeah, and the reason that I pulled this, Mike, is because I would like to have the community, the city residents, be given an opportunity to, in advance, to know that this surplus is available. And I also would like to see it maybe on a weekend where people can actually go out. Possibly, I don't know where it's going to be held, whether it's going to be at the yard or at the airport or somewhere within the city, to give the proper information with due time so that the residents of the city are, become aware of this and participate.
So it's an online auction. I do believe that they did set up a couple viewing days. I'll make sure a viewing day occurs on a weekend.
Right.
In addition to that, in order to make it available to the public, I'll make sure it's linked on the city's Facebook pages, the police, Westrix, Nixle. Yeah. It's informational. And then the front page of the city website. I'll work on them on the Nixle.
All right.
We'll get it out.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Councilmember Clower?
The proceeds from the sale, do they go to the corresponding funds or do they go to the general fund?
They go to the general fund.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any speaker cards on that item?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will move to item B1.
Yes, council members, this is a resolution recommending that you direct staff to release a request for proposal qualifications for use of the low moderate income housing asset funds. We're recommending that we release the proposal to use at least $700,000 of the fund, with the stipulation that at least $500,000 be for a proposal that is earmarked for extremely low-income rental housing. The staff report that has been given to you explains the basis for the recommendation. This funding was part of what was our redevelopment housing fund. After the law was passed to dissolve redevelopment agencies, there was a trailer bill passed that created stipulations for how the money can be used. We tried to explain that in the staff report. I wouldn't be surprised if it is a little confusing. There is one correction, though. On the table on the second page of your report, it says there's no cap on the use of funding for homeless prevention and rapid rehousing service. Actually, the cap is $250,000 per year. You can spend no more on that. But I don't know if you have any questions about the report, but we're requesting authorization to release the proposal.
Okay. Any questions from council?
Yeah.
Okay. Vice Mayor Clower?
So the staff report says that 2 groups or providers have come and asked about it.
Mm-hmm.
What are their ideas so far?
One is new construction of rental housing. They would have to, with their proposal, meet the target for the extremely low income, which is some of the hardest housing to provide. And then the other is to have assistance with their housing project for, they didn't anticipate the community facilities district. And so they were hoping to have that and then have the commitment for maybe to deepen some of the affordability of the units to meet the extremely low income.
And that's a project that's already been proposed?
And approved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any speaker cards on that item?
No, sir.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Move to item B2.
Yes, this is the recognized obligation payment schedule for the successor agency. For the fiscal year 2017-18, we're recommending that you approve the resolution approving the schedule and recommending that we forward it to the Oversight Board and then the Department of Finance.
Okay, is there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards? Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? All right, motion carries. Public input. Members of the public may address the city council on any matter within the city council's jurisdiction that is not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Speaker cards are available in the foyer and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. State law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on items which are not on the agenda.
We have one speaker, Mr. Mayor, for public input so far. It's Marty Richmond.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Marty Richmond from Hollister. First item is just a short thank you to the Hollister Police Department for the handling of a situation at Lucky's. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. You've probably read the reports in the newspaper. It showed a lot of restraint on behalf on the officers who responded to that issue. It's hard to be restrained when somebody's yelling, "I've got a gun! I've got a gun!" So I appreciate it. I want to thank all the officers involved in the entire Hollister Police Department. Second issue is I'm also sure you saw the headlines in the paper concerning fines regarding the wastewater plant and related items. I would like to see a good report investigation of that issue and a report to the public. I think it's very important to have a report to the public. Our history, if you go back a way, is that these things tended to get, you have to go back a way to get to that point, but these things tended to get kind of a hand wave, oh yeah, we've got this problem again or something. I'm not jumping on the details. I'm willing to wait to see what the report says, but I think it's really important because we're paying top dollar for our wastewater service. You have not seen fit at this time yet to move to reduce that price, which you've talked about at some extent, and I think the public would be rightly upset if we wound up paying any substantial amount of money as fines because it's an expensive enough operation. We have professionals doing it here. We also have a private company that we contract with who are also professionals. And I don't know what the investigation will show. I'll leave it up to you and for you to do a good job to find out if there is a problem, what the apparent problem is, and what the root cause, which is the most important thing, of the problem is, and what it was and what it's going to cost. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No more speakers, sir.
Thank you. We'll go to City Manager's report.
I have nothing to report other than if it pleases the council, I would request that we move item 53 just prior to 52. It's a relatively short item, and I can make sure that the consultant doesn't charge us an arm and leg for being here more than 5 minutes.
Would the council be all right with that? All right. We'll go to move item 53 as our next item.
Thank you, Mayor. And council, the item before you this evening is for the council to approve a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $2 million for the design, installation, and construction of pipeline in association with wells number 4 and well number 5. Well number 5 is located at Nash. Well number 4 is located at South Street. The idea is to tap into the new water line that's coming down from the West Hills Treatment Facility. It's always been has always been in the plan to make our initial connection at well number 5. However, with the hexavalent chromium 6 issue that the city has in its drinking water, there's additional design work and where the connection is going into and the blending process that we intend to use at well number 5. It makes sure it just ensures and enables that we always maintain compliance with our chromium-6 issues. With the design of that facility, we are taking advantage of the opportunity to go ahead and run a new water line from the eventual crosstown pipeline over to well number 4. We will try to use as much of the same design and components that we would be using on well number 5 at well number 4, again, to sort of expedite the process of coming into compliance years earlier than required by the state for our chromium-6 issues at that particular well. So essentially the west side of Hollister will be alleviated of all sort of chromium-6 issues by June of this year, 2017. Again, you've had reports provided by Harry and the Water District on the crosstown pipeline and its costs associated with this. Again, we're just taking advantage of this process a little bit early, making sure that we can tap into wells 4 and 5. We are underway with CEQA on the crosstown pipeline itself, going over and around the high school and down probably south side to the Sunny Slope County Water District's wells. Again, this is just really kind of an opportunity to address our needs sooner than later. We were anticipating about a $7 to $7.5 million expense as it relates to kind of chromium-6. Again, this $2 million is just part of that $7 million, just a little bit earlier than originally anticipated. And I want to thank really Harry, Jeff Catania, and Don for sort of coming up with this solution for the city of Hollister. Again, it takes a team to do this, and we have the opportunity to do something that's really pretty good for a vast majority of the residents in Hollister as it relates to our drinking water. So you'll start to see much higher quality water here very, very shortly on the west side of Hollister for sure. So if you have any questions, he's right there. He knows everything.
Do you want to ask a question first?
I don't care which order.
Why don't we go ahead and have your update, your presentation?
Okay, well, I'll give you the short version because Bill's done a good job in giving you an overview on the hexavalent chromium issue. The contractor that's at the site is Auburn Construction, Inc., and they have been lucky up until now because of weather and other issues, so that their plan is to have the West Hills water treatment plant fully in service by the end of June. This is essentially what Bill just said. We always had planned to have that good water enter your system, the city system, at well 5 or an additional entry point into your system, depending on what we would find in terms of the modeling and the updating work that we're doing continuously. Those of you that sit on the governance committee, Council Member Luna and Council Member Clower, have received an update on that. We'll give you another update actually in February, so you will hear the story. But what we're proposing is as part of now of the understanding of the early finish by Auburn, is to take advantage of that and to introduce the water at well 5, near well 5 as we'd always planned, but to upgrade well 5 as part of the hexavalent chromium solution at the same time. And so it's a two-parter. We're going to enter your system at well 5, but at the same time we're going to take advantage of the fact that we have a contractor on board who's prepared to do the work, and an engineer that has done some of the design work already to prepare for introducing the water, high-quality water, at well 5. There you have a grand total of 3 wells that are let's say high, but not very high, in hexavalent chromium. And those are 5, as he mentioned, on Nash Road, 4 on South Street, and 2, which is out actually not far from San Diego. It's called Bundesen. It's in the neighborhood, out to the south of Nash Road. And 2 is not as critical as 5, and 4. So we're suggesting that you take advantage of the engineers that we have on board, the fact that we had already included in the contract with Auburn to do some introduction of the water into the system. We're just suggesting, recommending that you expand that role to deal with hexavalent chromium and utilize the people that you have on board and ready to go. Auburn has agreed to do the work. We have not negotiated a final price, but if it's appropriate, I'll go through and explain how we got to the $2 million.
That'd be fine, please.
Yes. Well, the well 5 is includes a mixing chamber, which is essential now because we're introducing the high quality water very close to your customers. So we want to ensure very high mixing there. In order to take advantage of good operation, efficiency, and so on, we're upgrading the pump there, and then the control system so that in the event of an outage, you don't have a total shutdown. And so it's those things. It's mixing chamber, upgrading the pump and the controls and so on. Very little site work is required, but ultimately you have to have a control system that you can use through SCADA into your central system. And the cost of that is roughly $425,000. And we've talked to your staff, we've been through with your operations staff, and it is exactly what they need to go forward. So building on that, then we said, since we know that you will derive a benefit, this is from the water quality modeling that we've presented to you many times, will show that we should introduce good quality water into more points into the Hollister system so more customers see the good quality water. And so the next piece of work would be then to add a pipeline. It's about 4,500 feet. It would go on West Lake Boulevard, which is relatively new, then enter South Street, which is as old as I am, and then into the well there at South Street called the South Well. And we would just be replicating what we're doing at the other site, except that we now have a little less than a mile of pipe. So we're suggesting then that those two parts be done, and then in order to do that, we have to do some engineering to complete the pipeline work. We have to do something called potholing because we don't know exactly what's in the street. We can get some general records. But in order to avoid risk, we're going to do potholing. Again, Auburn has agreed to do that work. And then on top of that, we have some engineering costs, some management costs, and some construction management costs. And we're giving you a budget number that's all in for all of that work at $2 million. And again, that is an offset to part of the $7.5 million that we had previously presented to you more than a year ago.
Okay. Any questions from council? Councilmember Sims?
The first question that I had was, when you say good water, does that mean that what's coming in from West Hills is not only has less hexavalent chromium, but it also has less solids and just in general?
Yes, the TDS level is about 300 compared to your wells, which are much higher. They're in the 700 plus range. And so it's less than half of what would be in groundwater. The other major issue is hardness. Everybody who is a resident of Hollister knows about the hardness. And the hardness content is very, very low with the West Hills water because it's coming from the delta, it's surface water, as compared to the groundwater that derives its hardness from the calcium in the ground.
And then,
so the answer is yes.
And then my next question is, I'm assuming there was an RFP that went out for Auburn to get the...
That was done more than 2 years ago, and they were the low bidder. And this piece of work that we're talking about now, there was always considered to be a potential for Auburn to do the work. But what we did was we told them to defer the final connections until we'd finished the hexavalent chromium study. So we're now adding it back in. We don't have to add it back in, but the staff is strongly recommending that you take advantage of a contractor on board, an engineer that's on board, and do the work now, considering you're ultimately going to have to do it at some price.
But my question is more around. So it was in the RFP initially.
It was not an RFP. We had an invitation to bid. An RFP is what we use for professional contract. The invitation to bid was the entire package that was given to Auburn, well, and others. We got 5 bids. Everybody here has probably heard this story, but it's more than 2 years ago, and they were the lowest qualified bidder.
My concern is just that now we're changing the scope of the project. Do we have to go back out?
No, well, that's up to your attorneys, I suppose, but we're not changing the scope of the project. This is an integrated project that's covering the entire water system. And so it's not, we have a system, and we're not deviating from anything that we ever said in the master plan or anything that we ever said when we started the process. So this is not a short circuit, but it's your call on whether you want to go forward or not.
Brad, can you confirm that that's 100?
No, that's true. I mean, it's the nature of what the bid was, and the services that control, and those have not changed or significantly changed.
Do you remember what the mobilization cost was?
Yes, it was probably in the neighborhood of $200,000 for the first contract. There won't be any mobilization cost associated with it. That's a savings.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Leno?
I just want to thank Harry for all the updates for these past 2 years that I've heard from you coming forward in your presentations to keep us informed as to how the project is moving along. And so we've come to this point now, and I think we've done very well. And I think all the deadlines and project deadlines are in place. And so thank you for the information and keeping the community involved as well. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I think we can also thank you and your predecessors for not deviating from a plan and going forward. And I know a lot of people say we have plans that sit on shelves. This one didn't.
Not only that, but I want to go back to when we had that meeting and we were trying to make a decision on whether we should plan for these proposed changes to the state.
Yes.
And by doing that, we saved millions of dollars.
That's correct.
On what we're doing right now, just by planning ahead.
Tens of millions,
yes.
I might add.
I remember that day. It was that conversation. Well, of course, we should do this now rather than pay for it later, and it paid off in a big way. And that was mainly with your experience and guidance. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Do we have any speaker cards in this item?
We have one. We have one speaker, Marty Richmond.
Good evening again. I wonder if I could ask the city manager just close the loop on this conversation by kind of outlining where the $7.5 million, what's the financial plan for the $7.5 million? In other words, is it banked, or do we have the rates already in place that will bank it, or we plan to go out and bond it, or have we bonded it? I've kind of lost track. So I will cut my question short and take my answer from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want me to do the financial part, Harry? Okay. It's basically a combination of all of those things. What the crosstown pipeline, or we bonded and borrowed money to construct the West Hills treatment facility. But we always knew that we had to have a component of it to deliver water across town. So that's been kind of an exercise between, when we call $7.5 million out, that's between the city of Hollister and Sunny Slope County Water District. The exact share, whether it be 50-50 or 45-55, or if you ask Don, it's going to be 90 us, 10 him. But the reality is that, so it's built into the rate structure as well. It's also a capacity charge as well. In addition to that, we were fairly fortunate/unfortunate that when we adopted the rates several years ago, that our first tranche payments weren't actually due. So we were collecting money at the higher level prior to actually having to spend any real money. So if you'll recall, the California tiger salamander caused about a 20-month delay.
That's correct.
So the city of Hollister was collecting those normal rates well in advance of actually having to put out the money. So I guess the short answer is no, the city is not going to be going out and borrowing any additional money, at least right now. That's not the plan. It's split between the city and the county, and if I've missed something, County of Sunny Slope County Water District, I want to be sure. Yeah.
Yes, I'd just like to amplify on that in principle, the city and Sunny Slope County Water District have agreed to cost share the pipeline portion, not the part that goes through your city street out to the south well, but the remaining part. And it'll be very logically split and presented to you before any commitment is made. But there is no issue on the need for cost sharing or the willing to cost share. And then the last point is that that I'd like to emphasize what Bill said about delays. If we decide to just not do well number 4, there's always the prospect of an additional delay that appears unbeknownst to us and not planned for. And so the staff is urging you to seriously consider our recommendation to just move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay. Any other speaker cards? Any other questions from council? All right. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2017-8.
Second. The motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move back to item 52.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item that you have before you is related to the JPA between, it's basically the San Benito County Integrated Waste Management Agency, the City of Hollister, the County of San Benito, and the City of San Juan Bautista established a JPA in 1995 to coordinate all the integrated waste management programs and guidelines kind of imposed by the state of California. In 2007, the regional agency members approved the current joint franchise agreement with Recology for an 8-year term, and then that franchise agreement had an option for a 3-year extension from June 30th, 2015 to June 30th, 2018. Again, this current agreement expires in June of 2018. Since the expiration is about 18 months away, the San Benito County has entered into a contract with, I believe it's CSG, to help them organize and continue on with the intergovernmental agency. They have put together a timeline in which they would like the city's participation along with the county's participation and the city of San Juan Bautista to develop an RFP to go out to bid to receive proposals from companies who haul for a new franchise agreement to go on into the future. the city has a couple of options in front of them. One is to adopt a resolution that's attached that continues our relationship in the JPA and moves forward with the release or the development and the release of the potential request for proposal, or the council can begin negotiating actually directly with Recology for an extension of their current agreement with just the city of Hollister, exclusive of the city of San Juan Bautista or the county of San Benito. Either way, I believe it is necessary for the council to establish potentially an ad hoc committee with a member or two from the council to go through the process and begin either the negotiating process directly with Recology, or if deciding to go the request for proposal route to help to develop that actual document. I think the intent is to try to get. If they go the RFP direction, I think the intent is over the next 6 months or so to prepare the document and get it out by June, so that between June and December we can go and review those proposals and then try to get something adopted so that there's a nice smooth transition moving past June 30th of 2018. I think there's a PowerPoint presentation, and is she here? No? Where did she go? I thought I saw her earlier.
I thought I saw her, but
anyway, Kathleen had provided a sort of a presentation that she did at the Intergovernmental Agency or Intergovernmental Committee meeting earlier this month. I think it was on June 5th. So I don't know if I wasn't really here during that portion of the thing, so I don't know if we want to try to go through that, or if you just want to not go through that. It's up to you. We could look at the screens, but
January 5th.
I'm sorry, January 5th. What did I say, June 5th?
June.
I say June all the time, and during January, I apologize. Yeah.
I think it's difficult to do the presentation without her.
Yeah.
I think we could entertain questions from the council and from the public, and we can
absolutely
go from there. Vice Mayor Clower.
Do we already have a committee for this?
No, sir. They're asking for sort of an establishment of the committee to develop the RFP process. I was suggesting that if you decide to go to the negotiation route with Recology, that you also appoint a couple of members of the council to begin that conversation as well. So either way.
I think I'm on something that never meets that has to do with trash. I was put on it 2 years in a row. It's never met. And I remember I'm on water and trash. That's how I remember.
Well, things are going well if you're on something that never meets.
So the Intergovernmental Committee, it's a JPA right now between the county, City of Hollister, and San Juan Bautista. So if we put it out to RFP, that's how it would work. If we chose to negotiate directly with Recology, then we'd have to set up a ad hoc committee from the city's perspective.
To answer Councilman Clower's question, if you give me just a few minutes, I will see whether or not there is already an integrated waste management representative from the council, and I'll go check that right now, just so that we don't go too far without it.
Okay. You're going to go check that right now? Or?
I was. If you had questions for anybody else, or
well,
let's
answer the questions first, and we'll go from there. Councilmember Luna.
I'm just curious as to how many accounts the city alone has or would have, and if we would want to negotiate this on our own.
Our city ordinance requires every parcel to have trash service that has something going on. So there are parcels that have multiple businesses on them, that each one of those, obviously downtown, you can have a building that has 4 or 5 different businesses. They all usually have their own trash service that's related to their business, plus all the residentials. So I'm going to say I don't know. Phil may be able to answer that question, but you have about 10,000 parcels in town. And what's that? And so that's probably between, I would say, 10 13,000 probably is the number of accounts that they may be within the city of Hollister.
So I was just thinking, because the city of San Juan Bautista, the county of San Benito, and the city of Hollister, if we weigh it out and we really look at the city of Hollister and the residents that we serve, just makes me wonder what would be best if we just considered the city of Hollister without actually having a joint franchise agreement. I was just thinking about that, because I like to see the numbers as to how many how many residents we serve.
Okay. Any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes. First speaker is Michael Alva.
Good evening. I'll make this very, very quick here because I really wasn't prepared to talk, but at the insistence of a friend of mine, I filled out a card, so I consider that a personal accomplishment, number one. Number two, but onto the task at hand with regards to the idea that as a resident we'd be getting a new garbage service provider, if you will. I just have to say that in my personal dealings with Recology, I think they have always been there for me, been there for my family. They're very easy to work with. We've never had any problems with them, and if I can go off on a smaller tangent, their customer service has always been top-notch. But more importantly, in a time where I think we're going to have a lot of change coming, there is something coming up on the 20th of January. You may have heard of it. But I would feel much better as a resident if we were able to just kind of, if it's unnecessary, leave that alone. Let's keep what's in place. Let's keep Recology doing what they're doing. They are the masters of their craft, so to speak. And I also feel that as a resident, any less change and worries we have collectively as a community, I think the better it is. And that's all.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Katie Kofnovet. Sorry, Katie.
Hi, so I am Katie Kofnovic, resident of Hollister for over 30 years, and I'm here as an advocate on behalf of my company, Recology, to just hope that you guys can give us a chance to do negotiations before just putting it out to bid. I've been employed with this company for 15 years, and they are amazing. I'm a Teamsters employee, which means I'm in the union and have amazing benefits. If it wasn't for that, they take care of my company. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but cancer really recently struck family, my son. And if it wasn't for Recology, I don't see how I could pay for that. And so I'm just going to end this now, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Herman Arriaga.
Hello, my name is Herman Arriaga. I currently work for Recology. I'm one of 17 employees that actually currently reside within the city. I service the community. I'm one of the relief drivers for our company. And I look forward to appealing to the council to continue servicing the community. I mean, we try our best, even with the city growing, to accommodate every single resident. And our company has been doing so for the last few years. I mean, we've just been getting more and more homes. So we're happy to keep servicing the community, and we look forward to working with the city of Hollister.
Thank you.
John Day.
Thank you for this opportunity. I've been a garbage man for 29 years. Worked for 4 different companies. The last 5 have been with Recology, both in Santa Clara and down here. And I can honestly tell you it's the most employee-friendly company I've ever worked for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Frechette.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ben Frechette, and I'm a driver for Recology. I've been working with them for 15 years, and I worked originally with Waste Management, and they took over the contract. We went to work for Recology, which was a really great company to work for. But I'd like just to say my goal is to give my customers great, reliable, quality service they can depend on. And that's what I strive for. And we're a company that cares about the environment and our communities. And we want to take care of the communities and everything. And we have a lot of programs. We pick up used motor oil, household batteries, which is something we really care about. So I hope you decide to go with us and keep your business with us in Recology. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Couchet.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Phil Couchet. I'm the general manager of Recology San Benito County. I'm hoping that you had received my letter via either hard copy or via email, so you know why I'm here. You have a choice to go out to bid or to continue to negotiate with Recology, and it is certainly our desire to sit down with city staff, council members, to see what kinds of changes that may be desired and negotiate an ongoing agreement. There is time to do this. We'd like you to do this before you win it to an RFP. We provide good, reliable service. You don't hear complaints or issues with Recology customers. No news to you guys is good news. If we have a problem with a customer has a problem with us, we take care of it. We provide ourselves with good customer service. Now, in the idea of going out to an RFP, there's been discussions of economies of scale. You, the city of Hollister, are those economies of scale. You have the density of homes, the number of businesses that drive this contract. So, what you decide may very well decide what others do alongside you. You're the amount of business that's in the city of Hollister creates the economies of scale for the whole contract. As you've seen, we have 18 employees that live here in the city of Hollister. Some of them are at the audience with their fellow coworkers. Some have worked in the city of Hollister for over 20 years. When we were the low bidder in 2008, and when we took over the contract, we hired all of the employees that worked in the city of Hollister at that time. So these people know and love working for your city. These employees are spending their hard-earned money in your restaurants, in your stores. Their children go to the local schools. They play in the local little leagues. They play in the local soccer leagues. They're here members of your community. Recology is an employee-owned company. What that means is each and every employee is involved in an employee stock ownership plan. Every year, am I going to be cut off here?
Yes, you are. Thank you. We appreciate your taking the time.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Denise Kaufman, right?
Good evening and Happy New Year. I'm Denise Cawthon-Wright, and I live at 421 Powell Street, but also I'm employed at Chamberlain's Children's Center. I'd like to speak in support of Recology, and I have a couple of comments about that. Recology has maintained a wonderful partnership over the years with Chamberlain's by being a generous supporter and sponsor. Last year, when asked by Chamberlain's, they donated enough recycling bins for each of the 4 cottages the office, and the classroom. Over the years, they've continuously donated large dumpsters for our annual campus cleanups. And they've been a sponsor to some of our fundraising events, such as our 40th anniversary celebration last May. They have been a great partner for which we are grateful, and I'd like to share one story of their generosity. This is about Recology and their willingness to go above and beyond with their clients, in particular one of our children. Anthony was living at Chamberlain's, attending our non-public school, and was very interested in recycling. When the Recology truck driver arrived each week for pickup, the teacher would allow Anthony to go out and watch the activity, talk with the driver, and learn. Over time, they built up a nice relationship by the driver taking a few moments each week to talk to him about the importance of recycling and possible career paths. The driver went a step further and asked his company for a special Recology t-shirt for Anthony. The boy was over the top ecstatic with his shirt, and I think he wore it 3 days in a row before the staff can get it off of him to wash it. Anthony was named Mr. Recycling and educated the other children and staff on campus about what could be recycled. He also took out the cans each Sunday to the curb for pickup. This time together, the driver and the boy, might seem trivial to any outsider, but to a child at Chamberlain's, it was immensely important for several reasons, showing him about positive relationships, possible career choices, and environmental awareness, just to name a few. We appreciate Recology for this great partnership, as well as the city, and ask you to consider this business for services in the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And Marty Richmond.
Good evening again. I'm not working for Recology. I'm retired. But you know, I'm like everybody else in the city. I am a customer of theirs, and you know, you've never heard me come up here and make any complaint all these years. I live on one of those dreaded cul-de-sacs where they have to get in there with the big truck and maneuver around all the ill-parked cars and go in and fish out those bins that people misplace. We have somebody in the neighborhood who always puts their used oil up. On occasion, I've put out big slabs of cardboard because they wouldn't fit in the bins. You know, they simply do their service. They do a good job. Yes, I can't tell you that you never get a phone call. Only the city manager would know that. But I can give you my experience, and my experience is they do a really good job. They just get with it. They're always on time. If you call them, one time a bin broke, and we called them, and they replaced it right away. There's no hassle. I think their website stinks, but that's another deal. It has probably nothing to do with anybody here. They just have to change the way the website works to make it a little easier for old people like me who have trouble getting around on the internet. But other than that, as far as picking up the trash and picking up the recycles and doing all those things and picking stuff up off the ground when it drops and getting out of the truck and picking up the oil in the batteries and all that, they just do a great job. So I want to put my nickel in as a person who doesn't work for Recology and uses the service, and that's the kind of service I like, where I don't have to be on the phone with somebody all the time saying you forgot me or you didn't do a good job for me. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If there are no more speakers, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I apologize for not knowing this but Councilman Clower is correct. Look at him grin. He is part of the Integrated Waste Committee, as well as Councilman Ray Friend. And if Tom could put the PowerPoint up, I know it's a little bit backwards in orders, but we can have the presentation now.
Good evening. My apologies. I had a dead battery, and it's just really delayed me. So I really apologize and respectfully ask for your forgiveness. So I'm Kathleen Gallagher, and I work with the county's Integrated Waste Management Department as their acting program manager on a contract basis. You probably recall Mandy Rose was the longtime Integrated Waste Management Program manager who has since retired. So I've been working in the solid waste industry on the private sector and public sector since 1989. And so I just wanted to give you a brief overview with this PowerPoint about the decisions that are before you and answer any questions you might have. Do we have a forward? Okay, thank you. So just some quick background. That Hollister, San Juan Bautista, and the county formed a regional agency way back in 1995 in a joint powers authority agreement. And the purpose of that was cost efficiencies to meet state mandates. So not only things like what we're talking about tonight, the franchise agreement, but household hazardous waste, other types of waste reduction programs are part of what the regional agency does, the 3 jurisdictions. The county is the lead administrator, and so what that basically means is not only for the franchise agreement, but also for other waste and recycling programs as we report to the state to provide updates and to determine compliance or non-compliance with CalRecycle, which is the enforcement body for the state. So the franchise agreement that is going to be expiring on June 30th of 2018 is actually with that same regional agency. So San Juan Bautista, Hollister, and the county had formed this regional agency and went through a joint competitive procurement back in 2006, and that is the franchise agreement that is expiring on June 30th of 2018. As you might recall, there was an extension that was granted in September of 2014, and that is the term that is expiring on June 30th of 2018. So the franchise agreement that is expiring gives each regional agency the authority to either amend, extend, or provide a new franchise agreement. And that is the purpose of the discussion today, is to basically get direction from you. So if we can move forward. So on the staff report that you saw, that the recommendation and the staff recommendation for Hollister is similar to what San Juan Bautista and the county considered. So San Juan Bautista considered this on November 17th and the county on December 13th. And the recommendation, staff recommendation, is for Hollister to continue the joint participation for the franchise agreement, and basically regarding all decisions regarding the franchise agreement. And then the second is to participate in a process with the other regional agency members to select new programs, terms, et cetera, for a new franchise agreement. Through an advisory committee that would consist of Hollister, San Juan Bautista, and the county, elected officials, as well as members of the residents and the business community, and go out to participate in a request for proposal, basically a competitive procurement process. So the process would basically, just with a little bit more detail as outlined here, is that we would conduct a competitive procurement process, but first what we want to do is get feedback from the community, each of the communities, to decide what programs you like, what programs you don't like, and plus there's new legislative requirements that since this contract is an older franchise agreement that was basically developed back in 2006. And I just want to say that's not a criticism at all of Recology. This is the franchise agreement that was given to Recology. So this is not a criticism of Recology. I'm actually a fan of Recology. They service our house, and I think they do a great job. This is basically to define all the programs and terms that we want to see in the new franchise agreement. So the process would be that we would want to get feedback from Hollister, the county, San Juan Bautista, and provide all of those new terms, new programs within the new franchise agreement. And then based on that, all of the feedback from each of the jurisdictions, what we would want to do is then develop that franchise agreement as well as the request for proposal documents. Then we would bring that back to each of the electeds. So we would bring that back to our council here, the county, as well as San Juan Bautista before we release that in June of this year. And I'll show you the schedule a little bit more in detail. Go through the evaluation process, and then we would be bringing back the evaluation process for your consideration and hopefully eventual approval. So the resolution you have before you is basically stating two things, that Hollister wants to continue to participate with other regional agency members and the development of the new franchise agreement. And then secondly, to participate in the joint request for proposal with the other members. And then within that, participate in the advisory committee to provide all the programs and services that you would want in the new franchise agreement. So just a little bit more detail. That advisory committee, we would hope to be meeting in early February. And hopefully be getting feedback and holding some community meetings as well to get that feedback from the community. In terms of the community members, we would want, the community meetings, sorry, if we could forward on that. So we've just talked a little bit more about this, sorry. Talking about the advisory committee and then the city councils, again, we would be bringing that back to each the elected officials for consideration. Then if we could move forward on one more slide. Thank you so much. So for the community meetings, we would want to ensure that we're getting the type of feedback that that Hollister wants to see, the county as well as San Juan Bautista, and that's the reason why we would want to get as much public engagement as we possibly can in this process as we develop the programs. And if we can forward to the schedule. So my old eyes are probably having the same problem with the font. But this is basically so if you could go back to the calendar. Thanks. Would basically be talking about the community meetings and the RFP document development and the community outreach between now and May. Then we would want to be bringing this back to the electeds in June of this year. And then once we received the approval, move to request for proposal and release those documents. Then we would be bringing this back to the council and board consideration in the fall of this year, and then consider final negotiations and council approval. And then certainly we would be giving sufficient time, whether on the selected contractor, whether it was Recology or another vendor, for implementation, and then the startup of services on July 1st of 2018. If we could move to the next slide. As Phil Couchet said, in terms of Recology, in your staff report, we did talk about an alternative option, which would basically be an extension with Recology. Now, one of the things that I want to just really highlight in terms of what you may or may not want to do is if that is one of the choices, we would want to certainly ensure that that was a very defined scope of work that Recology would have, and get that same input that we would be talking about for that franchise agreement. So I can certainly go into more detail about that, but I know that there's been a lot of public comment today, and I did want to say that that was in the staff report, and I can certainly expand on that process further if you'd like. So the recommendation before you is, and the resolution is to affirm participation in the joint regional agency development of the franchise agreement, and secondarily to participate in the request for proposal, as the staff recommendation has stated. That's the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council? Councilor Luna?
At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the city of San Juan Bautista and San Benito County approved some agreements in November and December
So
2016?
what they approved was the resolution that is before you today, which is they approved to participate in the development of a new franchise agreement, and they approved and they approved participation in the request for proposal to develop those documents. So basically, they're stating that we're going to do now what the regional agency did back in 2006.
Why weren't we included back in November and December, the city of Hollister?
It was simply the way the calendar. So San Juan Bautista agendized it fairly quickly. The county did, and Hollister wanted to go on January 17th.
Okay.
Okay, Vice Mayor Clower.
I'm sure the reasons are simple, but what was the original rationale for creating the regional agency in the first place?
Sure. The region, basically, it's for cost efficiencies because there are 3 relatively small jurisdictions. Cal Recycle, which is the enforcement agency, certainly allows smaller jurisdictions to come together as one regional agency for cost efficiencies in terms of franchise agreement administration, as well as compliance with state mandates. So instead of each jurisdiction doing reports to the state or having their own franchise agreements, they decided to do a regional agency back in 1995. So basically, cost efficiencies and less administration.
Okay, I can see how the admin would be cheaper if you put a couple different entities together, but it seems like the physical service, we actually might be able to get a cheaper service by not having to subsidize 5-acre parcels where they're going out to pick up 1 trash can every quarter mile. Is that something that's possible?
So typically, when in the cost efficiencies, a lot of it has to do about not only collection but the actual public education, cost of containers, et cetera. So it's basically the cost efficiencies in those regards. So are you talking about length between? Distance between?
Yeah, because I mean, if I've got my district's essentially like 1.5 miles by 1.5 miles, and we've probably got 3,000 pickups in that 1.5 miles by 1.5 miles. So it's going to be a lot cheaper for every single one that they have to hit, whoever's doing it, than if they go out to Spring Grove and they have to drive a quarter mile every single time they pick up. It just seems like the actual service is going to be a lot cheaper if you just did the most dense area by itself. I understand the admin is going to be more expensive because you have people there's redundancy of work, but that's not the case with the service.
Yeah, so in terms of the new franchise agreement, a lot of the things that are going to have to be dealt with are some of the new legislative requirements, organics collection and so forth. So a lot of that has to be incorporated within the new franchise agreement as well. So I think all of those things would be coming up as part of the development of the new franchise agreement.
Okay. How long would you expect it to take if we were to go into exclusive negotiations for us to find out if it's something that we want to follow through with or not?
Sure. So if we can go, this is actually the slide. So to initiate exclusive negotiations, we would want to have a defined scope of work for Recology to submit a proposal on. So what it would involve is to get feedback from you and to decide what programs you wanted to see within the new franchise agreement. It would also involve, if we can move to the next slide, it gives a little bit more, the slide before that. It gives a little bit more detail on, we would want to provide the revised franchise agreement. We would want to provide cost forms for Recology to submit those documents. So it would be a very detailed, so we want to ensure that the cost forms, the franchise agreement were very detailed, and we would provide that to Recology. And then we would submit that for Recology to complete a proposal. So how long that would take, we would have to probably discuss that with Phil to see how long it would take to get those documents back. But first, we would need to be getting feedback from you on the new franchise agreement. What new programs you would want to see, as well as the development of the new franchise agreement, and provide that to Recology. So it would, I would have to get back to you on the specific time frame.
Okay. Are most of the entities that are going out for RFP or renewing their contracts, are they seeing an increase or a decrease or essentially the same cost?
So the last two procurements that I've been involved in, they actually, the most recent procurement, we actually expanded the level of services that were included. It included organics collection. What I mean by organics collection is not only the yard materials, but also food waste that would be put right into the same container, as well as some expansion of the household hazardous waste. They actually saw a slight reduction in costs, which is not, which was quite amazing to see. And the procurement that I was involved in prior to that, they expanded services rather significantly, and there was a slight increase in rates in that procurement.
And were those RFPs or were they?
Those were requests for proposals.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Sims, did you have a question?
I have a couple questions. So what are the types of things that are in a franchise agreement?
Sure. So the franchise agreement is basically the Bible or the operational document of what the garbage and recycling company has to do. So what it has in there is what types of services it will provide to residents, what type of services it will provide to businesses, how often, the size of containers that are provided, the costs, the monthly costs. Franchise fees are included in there, AB 939 fees, oftentimes diversion requirements, liquidated damages for non-performance. So it's a very thorough document that basically spells out very specifically what the garbage and recycling company will do for the jurisdiction.
So in the slide, the calendar of events, the RFP comes before the franchise agreement. Why would it be that way and not flipped?
No, the franchise agreement would be developed before the request for proposal document. So the franchise agreement is developed, and then that draft franchise agreement is incorporated as part of the request for proposal documents. So that it is all part, the franchise agreement is included in the request for proposal documents.
Can you bring it back up the slide?
Yes.
Maybe I'm confused on something. The timeline. So franchise agreement, final negotiation, and board council's approval. So that the final negotiation would be after the RFP?
So what happens is, so on the when you're saying the final negotiation, so oftentimes what happens is the request for proposal is released, the proposals are submitted, the evaluation committee provides the input on the proposals. Those go to the board, the electeds, and then they say, here is the selected contractor we want, and they submit to staff they direct staff to say, yes, this is the company we want to go with. Please complete final negotiations with that company, and then that final franchise agreement comes back for approval.
So would it be, given that information, would it be, characteristic of situations that sometimes somebody will go out for a franchise agreement first and then give the company that they're working with the opportunity to respond to that and then go out for RFP?
So typically the franchise agreement is developed in very, like I said, in very specific terms. Here's the services we want. Here's how frequently we want it. Here's the liquidated damages. Here's the state mandates that need to be met. Those are incorporated within the request for proposal. And then that franchise agreement as well as the request for proposal documents are released. So that's typically the process for a competitive process. I'm not sure if that's not answering your question.
I guess my question is would it be possible to do a new franchise agreement without an RFP primarily and take that franchise agreement to Recology and say, do you agree to this franchise agreement, and negotiate, and then if that doesn't work out, go out to the RFP process?
Yes, so if we can move to the alternative option, that's what you just stated basically was what the alternative option is that's in the staff report. So let me just, if I could, so that franchise agreement would be developed with the new programs and services that would be provided to Recology, as well as very defined cost forms for them to complete, and those documents would be submitted back. And then the jurisdiction would decide yes or no whether they felt that that was the right value for the jurisdiction. I guess the one thing that I would consider is that, again, I am a fan of Recology. The point of the request for proposal is to get the best services at the best cost. And it is my understanding that Recology would indeed propose on the request for proposal. So we would get Recology's proposal as well as probably 3 or 4 other companies. And so obviously that would welcome cost innovation, best services for the best cost. So I'm not sure if Phil wants to speak to this, but my recollection was when he had was asked the question, I think at the county, was would they propose on a new request for proposal? And Phil said, I don't see any reason why we would not. So again, this is not at all a criticism of Recology. It's simply providing the best services for the best cost. That's the purpose and why that recommendation is before you.
Final question is, during the franchise agreement, will we be discussing the contracts within the JPA and how the payment that's associated to each individual entity, being San Juan, the county, and Hollister?
So do you mean the franchise fee that Hollister includes within your franchise?
Yes.
So that is absolutely up to each jurisdiction to decide what franchise fee they want, AB 939 fee. That's absolutely up to each jurisdiction, and it doesn't need to be the same across the board. San Juan's could be different from Hollister's, could be different from the county. And if I could just offer one other suggestion in a procurement in San Mateo County, there was a jurisdiction that was in a joint powers authority, obviously similar to a regional agency. And what they said is, we would like to basically do both. We would like to do a competitive procurement, but we would also like to try and have a franchise agreement basically on our own and do our own competitive procurement. So they basically did both. Perhaps that's something, this was City of Belmont in San Mateo County that decided to basically do those basically concurrently. And that's perhaps an option. I think the one thing is the contract integrated waste management is basically what I had said a little bit earlier. It is about innovation, best services for the best cost. And the downside is basically of non-competition is, do we know that we got the best value? I think that's probably what it would boil down to.
Okay. All right. I think you pointed out something. I think we all understand. Recology's done a great job here locally, and I've never had a complaint. Well, one time when you dropped my trash can, but didn't pick it up. That's a different story.
That's pretty good for a lot of years.
I'm sorry? Yeah, let me finish this. You can come up. But I think what's important here is we're not questioning the quality of Recology. I would think we all hope that they'd be the winning bid. I think our job here is to make sure we're doing our due diligence. We're putting things out to bid. We're getting the best value for the community. Because if we don't do that, how do we know? And I think that's the problem that can happen or creep in over time, where eventually we find out that maybe we weren't getting the best deal and we can't do anything for 10, 13 years about it. We don't want to be in that place. We want to be in a situation where Recology, if they were a bidder, gave us the best bid, the best service, and they continued. And again, I think Recology has done that here locally. But we have to make sure as a city that we're looking out for the residents' interests first. We're doing everything possible. And I think also there was a question about San Juan Bautista or the county. We're partners, and we have to look at it, because every time I hear the conversation about, well, they're on their own, we are a small community combined. We are tiny communities separated. And there's a lot of new state laws coming into effect here. And I don't think it's a good idea to be breaking that apart and having to go at that on our individually. These things are changing. There's new requirements coming up from the state, as you pointed out, from some of the different organic waste and so on. So I think our responsibility is making sure that we are getting the best value for our residents. We're doing our part as council members to assure the residents that we're not just favoring somebody. The quality is not a question. Recology's done a great job, and I'm sure if they were the bidder, they'd probably have the advantage knowing our city so well. So I want to make sure we're not kind of mixing these conversations up.
Yes.
I think it's important that the public understands we did our part. And if Recology is not the winner, we are going to hold the next company accountable also through the penalties and different things that would have to happen. But we have to do our part first and go through these stages. Otherwise, all we're doing is renewing contracts, and that's just never a good idea in these types of public contracts. So we have to do our part. If it was a private company, that'd be different. But we're not. We're responsible to everybody. You had something you wanted to point out, Phil?
Yeah, thank you. Just real quick, thank you for letting me speak again. To continue my thought, back in 2008, when we were awarded the contract, we were the lowest bidder at that time. And we spent several $1 millions with that startup. We bought all new carts for your residents. We bought all new bins for your businesses. We procured vehicles to service those customers. And that was just 10 years ago. It's not unusual at all for a jurisdiction after a 10-year period to renegotiate with the existing hauler. That's a lot of capital money to be outputting every 10 years. And secondly, as Kathleen said, you never know. You never know if you go out for an RFP whether you're going to get a better price or a higher price. We've been held to a CPI. It's a formulated CPI in the franchise agreement that our increases have averaged about 2% a year since 2008. And you may recall there were even a couple of years where they decreased. So we started out as the lowest bidder. We've increased by a very small amount, since that point. So I think that you can be fairly confident that the price you're getting is a good competitive price, and you're getting good competitive service for that. And if we sat down and you weren't comfortable with the negotiations, you can always go back out for that RFP. There is time. So again, I'd just like to reiterate my desire to, if you would be willing to sit down and negotiate with Recology.
I appreciate it, and again, our job is to make sure we are getting the best price. I'm sure there are cities that are paying lower rates than us in the surrounding areas, probably. Correct?
When you consider rates, there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of factors, right? This is why we have to go through this bidding process to consider those factors. Otherwise, we are not doing our job, and that's part of it. You guys have done a great job, and I would hope and expect you to be bidding on the project, and you have a built-in advantage already, as you point out, from all the costs you incurred early on. So I think, again, from my position is we have to do our part to make sure we're looking out for the best interests of the residents.
Right, thank you.
Is there any other questions from Councilmember Sims?
I have two more questions. If we did go out for RFP, do we have to go with the lowest bidder, or would we have like a standard, or would we have like a rubric and go based off of the rubric, and it wouldn't just be based off of cost alone?
So typically on the request for proposal, it's what you want. So if we want it, typically the last couple of requests for proposals, it's the best value it's the best services for the best cost. So it doesn't automatically go to the lowest bidder. But how the request for proposal is how you want it to look. That's why we want the advisory committee and why we want to hear from you and the county and San Juan Bautista what you would like. But typically that's in the last couple of procurements, that's how we have written the request for proposal.
I guess my next one is not necessarily a question but a comment, and I think that if we are going to do our due diligence and bypass the initial negotiations, I do feel that we should also do an RFP with Hollister alone, so that when we go into negotiations, we have a full understanding of what we're getting into and what it looks like, so that I'm not suggesting that we pull away from San Benito and San Juan, but I do think that we should keep that in perspective of how much we're contributing to this particular contract. And so if we do go out for the full RFP, I think we should do an RFP for Hollister alone, just as a comparison.
Vice Mayor Clower?
I tend to agree with Councilmember Sims. I think if that's possible, that's a decent idea. I don't like the idea of my constituents subsidizing the county residents. I have a problem with that. I would also like to say that Recology, as far as I can tell, has been providing a great service. I've never had a call. I've never had any issues with the company personally. But I keep coming back to the question where if we get this goes through, we do a exclusive negotiating agreement. 2 years down the line, somebody comes up to me and says, "Well, why'd you do that with Recology? What made you make that decision?" I don't know how I would answer that, other than they gave us a good service. They were going to continue the good service. We've got a good service. I think it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell whether or not there's a better service for a better price. If you have a team, every year you have tryouts, and you may have the same people make the team each year, but you may have somebody else come along who does a better job and actually gets a starting role. Without having any comparison, I'm a novice when it comes to trash contracts. I don't know what makes a good trash contract, what doesn't. If I can't compare two things together, then how am I supposed to say, you know what, this was the better option, this was the best option we could come up with? So I have a little bit of concern with not being able to compare it to anything. That's why I asked, are other jurisdictions getting better deals when they go out to their RFP? Because we really don't have anything to compare it to unless Ecology is going to come up and say, hey, we're going to do it for 10% less, and then we'll do it a little less every year after that. I don't know how I can say, yeah, this is a great deal, because there might be somebody out there who's got a better setup. That's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Councilmember Lynn?
You mentioned something about the city of Belmont. And the city of Belmont went out and did both, right?
Correct.
And so can you tell us which one did they do first? I mean, did they go out and create?
They basically did that concurrently, and the end result was, because city of Belmont was obviously its own city, it's only comprised of about 31,000 residents. Obviously, that cost was more expensive than the cost for the Joint Powers Authority, similar to the regional agency. So them having their own procurement, the end result, the cost to the ratepayers by comparison was more expensive with them doing their own procurement.
Yeah, and I also agree with my peers up here in regards to the city of Hollister having the ability to go out and consider negotiating direct, with Recology. Personally, I know they've done a wonderful job in the city, but also, while we are a small community and we do have San Juan Bautista in the county of San Benito with us, we're very different. We are. And also, that's why I was asking for numbers. I really wanted to see the numbers. I wanted to see the comparison of the city of San Juan Bautista in comparison to the county, in comparison to the city. We are the county seat. And I wanted to see those numbers just to get an idea of what kind of service, Recology is right now providing for each community within the county of San Benito. So I would still like to see that. But I would like to have the opportunity as a city to go out there and do our own negotiation as well, and just to find out where we might stand.
May I ask for a quick clarification? You were saying see the numbers. Do you mean see the rates between the three jurisdictions?
No, I wanted to see the household numbers as to the services that Recology is providing to the city residents. How many residents are they providing this service in comparison to how many residents in San Juan Bautista, in comparison to how many areas in the county that they're providing?
Sure, absolutely. I could get that
and
information.
And that I personally would like to see.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Is that any other questions? Councilmember Sims?
Final question for me. City of Belmont, in comparison to the other entities in the JPA, how is that compared to what we have?
So one of the questions that was asked at the Intergovernmental Committee is to make a comparison between rates is rather challenging, and the reason why is, so City of Belmont, very dense community. They had a lot of significant programs. They also had a vehicle impact fee. They had an AB 939 fee, and they had a franchise fee. So those are incorporated within the actual collection rates. So it makes it difficult to compare Hollister versus Belmont. One of the things that we do want to do as part of this process is benchmark specific programs at specific costs and try and provide that to the advisory committee, as Councilmember Clower was talking about, really trying to get that, drill down in that information. And that's one of the things we would want to do at the advisory committee, is to really show, okay, here's the programs. They have commercial organics collection along with food collection. So those are the programs that are provided to residents as well as businesses. They have household hazardous waste, curbside collection. There's a lot of different variables. So it's tough to give you, garbage and recycling's become very complex. So it's rather challenging to give a real clear comparison, because oftentimes they're just so very different because of the types of services and the collection of the AB 939 fee, the vehicle impact fee, and the franchise fee that's incorporated within the rates that are then paid by, obviously, residents and the business community.
I guess my question was more along the lines of Belmont in comparison, population comparison to the others in their JPA. Like compared to us, we have, say, 35,000 to the 5,000, or how does that compare? Is
Sure.
really more my question.
Yeah, it was 30,000 among 450,000. So the JPA was actually 450,000.
So that I mean that's what my question was. Is the finding was that it went up, and that makes sense. Whereas our finding presumably would probably be less.
Yeah, we would have to see, and I think that that would be one of the things that we would want to certainly point out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Is there a motion?
I am going to speak out on this. I would like...
Let me... Is this in the form of a motion?
Motion. It's in the form of a motion. And I would like to move forward on Resolution 2017-7 with the option to consider the City of Hollister to exclusively negotiate with Recology.
So just for clarification, to move forward with the JPA,
Now
the RFP, but at the same time negotiate directly with?
My motion would be to negotiate directly with Recology, with the City of Hollister.
Well, we have to deal with this motion first, this item. So if it fails, then we could make the other motion. Is that?
So
Was that two
what
different
are we?
motions?
you have two options here within the resolution.
Okay.
And I'm going with the second option.
You're going with the second option.
Yeah, it's just not the prepared motion in the package.
Okay.
Now, if we were to say, if we were to move to have accept this with the additional RFP of Hollister alone, would that be an acceptable motion? Could we approve this with that addendum?
There would be an argument because you're joining a joint powers agreement and you're giving up your independence. I believe what I heard three of you say, that all of the discussion is before you wanted to do that, you wanted to see what the bids were in the JPA or alone. Is that correct, Mickey?
That makes sense.
You wanted to see what the numbers were or negotiate.
I want to see the numbers.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So just so that we're clear, there's two options in the staff report,
Right.
but there is only one resolution. The one resolution commits the council to participating in the JPA and going out with an RFP. It does not permit the exclusive negotiation with Recology. So if you wanted to do an exclusive negotiation with Recology, you don't adopt this resolution.
Right.
If you want to participate in the JPA, you do adopt this attached resolution.
Right. So we're dealing with this resolution
This
first.
2017-7 is just to participate in the JPA, very similar to what San Juan Bautista did and the county of San Benito. Sorry.
But you don't have to formally reject it.
Right.
You can instruct staff to come back with a different resolution, which I would recommend, or give us the direction to come back with a specific one. You don't have to formally reject the JPA at this point.
So we wouldn't have to vote on this, or do we have to vote
No,
on
you
this
don't have to.
resolution? We don't have to vote on this resolution.
Correct.
And we direct staff to bring it back
With the other option.
with
Whatever you're.
with the discussion we had here today, which it considers two options.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve Resolution 2017-7. Is there a second?
have a question. So I think there's another option that we're not seeing, and that's that you can do the RFP for the regional agency and also do an RFP for the city of Hollister alone.
True, you need, but the resolution before you is to join the joint powers agreement.
If we join the
But can't you do both at the same time?
No. Once you're in the joint powers agreement, you agree to be bound by the administration contained within it and how that's defined between you, the county, and San Juan Bautista.
Okay.
Is that clear?
That's
Clarify?
clear.
Okay, so there's a
Don't
motion.
like it, but it's clear.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
What was the motion?
For approval of Resolution 2017-7.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that died for
Well, no, that's why there was a question.
Got
so
it. Okay.
Now we're going to look at, is there a second?
I'll second it to take it to a vote.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Opposed.
2 for, 2 against, so motion dies.
Did we just formally reject this?
No. A 2-2 is no action.
No action.
I will bring it back for a full council consideration.
With
the
new
additional
resolutions.
of having the RFP.
Right.
And Councilmember Friend?
Right,
Yes,
you're right.
we're going to be here.
That would be good.
Okay.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show here. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. before.
Good evening. This item is requesting the approval of the proposed boundary on the cottages and 1640 Cienega Cross subdivision for the annexation into Community Facility District 2, Police and Fire Services, annexation number 16 and 17. The special tax allows to pay for protection of fire, allows to pay for police protection and fire protection services, including maintenance to fire suppression and police equipment, as well as payment of salaries, benefits of firefighters and police personnel.
All right. Any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards? Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Move forward to item 55.
This next item is for CFD4. This item is requesting the approval of the proposed boundary of Flour Mill for the annexation into Community Facility District 4, Public Facility Services, annexation number 9. This special tax allows maintenance to the annex areas, providing public improvements, services of development projects, and minor subdivisions.
Okay. Is there any questions?
Yeah. Do we know what the cost is for this one?
So we decided that as minor subdivisions, we have a flat rate as the special tax so that we could half of this money to be used to contribute to parks and different facilities that are dedicated to the city. We came out with the decision that even though some of these subdivisions don't have any type of dedication to the city, that the people who will be living in these houses most likely will be using parks that are nearby, so somehow they'll be contributing to maintain the different parks and different facilities that are part of the city.
So is there a number?
I do not have the number right now, but I could get back to you and I could give you that number.
What's the number?
It goes based on the amount of houses that are on each subdivision, but I believe for this one was $72 and something cents, but I will have to get back to you with the exact amount.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any speaker cards? Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Go to item G61, reports from city council members regarding their committees. Councilmember Luna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, on Friday, January 13th, I attended the San Benito County Aging and Long-Term Care Commission meeting. I believe you didn't make it in that meeting. Interesting, 10 coalition members were there. It was very interesting, and it was held at the Hazel Hawkins boardroom. A lot of information on long-term care and the need for that in San Benito County. That's my report.
Is that it? Vice Mayor Clower?
Yes, last week I met with several members of city staff and Hollister School District staff as part of the efforts for the joint use committee between the two entities. I was happy to say that by the end of maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of meeting, that we actually started moving in a positive direction. Calaveras has gotten a little bit of help today, as it has over the last couple of months. So that facility should be looking a lot better here if someone goes and checks it out tomorrow. We're looking at hopefully having a draft of the new joint use agreement, which will be 2 of them, one for the indoor facilities and one for outdoor facilities. Looking at reviewing a draft at the end of this month with the meeting in the first week of February. At that point, we'll make some notes, make some changes, and then hopefully have it back for approval by the council and the board of trustees in, was it March or April? Was it March? In March, yeah. So it's going to actually move along a lot faster than I was planning, which is good. because Mr. Talia with the school district has put in a lot of legwork and has been cooperating with Mike in the last couple months. So we're moving along.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Sims, you're not on any committees yet, but that will be taken care of very soon. I just have, we didn't have a fire committee meeting this month. We didn't have a quorum. On the intergovernmental, we had an update from the Hollister School District, giving us an update on the population, their plans for the future, and renderings of the new school that they're proposing to build at Santana Ranch, which is in the works. They're just trying to finalize the purchase of the property and also some additional funding from the state to get the project done as soon as possible. And also some of the other plans for the future sites so that we can make sure that our schools are not overcrowded. At the next month meeting, we are going to have the high school do a presentation for us. I want to thank both groups for being at these meetings and helping us understand our needs at our local schools. We will go to item 62, informational reports from City Council. Councilmember Luna.
I had the opportunity to work with a group of students on the Safe Connections and Complete Streets survey for west of Hollister. We were able to pick up quite a few signatures, and people were very interested in the survey. So we were able to actually go through the survey with those residents, and I also reported that during the meeting with long-term care, and people seem to be very interested in that. So I just wanted to report on that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Clower?
Yeah, I've received a request that the ad hoc committee for the medical marijuana ordinance come back, so I just want to put that out there. Also, in mid-February, I believe the 16th, Thursday the 16th, Mary and Brian have been working on a business outreach program, and they're going to be having it on the 16th at 7 in the morning. So that's very exciting. Hopefully we'll keep getting the word out for that. And then if anybody is interested in the goal sheet that I talked about for me personally, in December, if somebody wants to reach out, I can get them a copy of that. Actually, things are moving along pretty good on a number of the goals. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to meet as a group and do a retreat sometime next month, so we can kind of see where everybody's at and hopefully be on the same page moving forward about what we want to accomplish this year. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Sims?
I don't have any information to report at this time, but I would like to commend everyone that helped with the flooding over in Lovers Lane area. I know emergency services responded very quickly. I know that a lot of things, a lot of people that were outside of emergency services helped and lended a hand. And there's a good number of schools and agencies that have gotten together and got together food and clothes and all kinds of things that the families that were affected needed. So thank you all to who responded, and I'm sure the people that were severely affected were very appreciative, and as we are as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And to expand on that, I wanted to thank the city staff. Really did an excellent job at preventing floods here locally. I saw them out there constantly cleaning up and doing things to prevent flooding from happening in the city, and it did a great job for a storm as big as that was. So I want to thank everybody that was out there making that happen. Thank you again. City Manager?
Again, I kind of, on the same thing, I think I'd like to personally also thank the city of San Jose. They sent their swift water rescue team out. They were instrumental in the initial response. We actually have a staff member here who was directly affected, right, probably dead center of the entire mess. And I know that he got out on his own, but I know that many of his neighbors didn't necessarily, and they did receive some assistance. So I want to make a special thank you to them. Also, Mayor you are absolutely correct. We had every available personnel for the last probably 8 weeks, but it's certainly the last couple of weeks before the storms, and they're out even now with because we did have some rain. We obviously have some additional leaves falling, so they are out there on a regular basis continuing to clean our DIs. We may have some water standing on our normal bad spots, but it certainly is dispersing much quicker than it had in years past. So I do want to thank our streets crews and everybody that's been a part of that. With that, I also wanted to just say real quick, this morning, I believe, I hadn't gotten a chance yet. Nick and I missed each other a couple times, the reporter from their freelance. Just want to give a quick update on, there was a story on, I guess, the online version today about, I think the headline was something about a sewage spill. I just want to make sure that everybody in this community realizes that the headline's not technically correct. It's not a domestic spill. It wasn't a sewage spill. It was basically the events that took place in July with the cannery and the diversion valve. Everybody, you've all been pretty much informed on it. Tonight, we actually approved the CIP to get the new diversion valve put in, so there won't be that problem in the future. So I just want to make sure that if anybody's watching that it was clear that that was the case. And there hasn't not been a monetary fine established, and there likely won't be, but that remains to be seen. But I just want to let everybody know that the council took care of the situation actually tonight, so with their action.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Chief?
Just two things. Today we released the 2016 Hollister crime stats. They were actually a lot lower, about 20% lower on average than the previous year. Folks, if they want to go and check those out for themselves, I actually include the raw stats. Just go to hollisterpolice.org and go to the crime stats log, and you can go right to it. Actually, I think I have the last 5 or 6 years in there as well for comparison. And moving on, February we'll have our first rally meeting. It'll be just with the stakeholders and probably pretty small. We've made contact with roadshows, and they're going to send their reps out here just to sort of get familiar with each other again and answer any questions and any concerns they had from last year. That's it.
Thank you very much. City Clerk?
Nothing to report except that we are continuing on with our training in the Granicus agenda management software, and it's all going well.
Excellent. All right. HIJK, there is no business. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
No, that's Roberts and Amy Rosenberg.